You can't let him appear on camera, Sophia said, her voice trembling. The baby bottle clattered to the carpet, and milk stains spread quickly across the fabric. Marcus suddenly grabbed her wrist, his cold fingertips digging into her skin. Don't forget who bought your apartment, who renewed your visa, he snarled. He flourished a Berlin court mediation document, its edges frayed and whitened with use. If Isabel dares to make a fuss, I'll expose how she kept Luca from seeing his grandfather for 3 years. Luca's cries grew louder, but Marcus's gaze was fixed on his own red-rimmed eyes in the mirror. Suddenly, he lifted his phone to sneak a photo. In the frame, Sophia's tears fell onto the baby's swaddle, exactly the single father's redemption storyline he needed. The July afternoon sun in Vienna was like melted butter, sticking thickly to the glass curtain wall of the restaurant. For the third time, Marcus Cohen adjusted his bow tie, only to hear his father cough softly behind him. Just hold on for 10 more minutes, Marcus whispered, turning around. His fingers unconsciously brushed the edge of his phone. The number of viewers in his live stream was about to hit 30,000. Old Cohen's silver hair looked ashen in the harsh light. He glanced at the cue card peeking out of his son's suit pocket, emblazoned with a promotional slogan for limited edition Caviar. Do I need to give a speech for the ribbon cutting? He asked. No, just stand there and smile, Marcus replied, catching sight of his assistant gesturing at the door. They're ready. The moment the flashbulbs popped, Old Cohen's right hand suddenly clutched his chest. The sharp crash of a champagne glass hitting the floor was drowned out by applause, but Marcus could hear the blood in his veins freeze. His father, like an old oak struck by lightning, slowly crumpled onto the rose-petal-strewn steps. Call an ambulance. The restaurant owner's scream cut through the air. Marcus froze in place. His phone vibrated in his palm, and comments flooded the live stream. What happened to Mr. Cohen? Is this part of the show? He looked down to find his thumb had already pressed the continue live stream button. Everyone, there's an unexpected incident. He heard his own voice, surprisingly steady. Orders placed now, get a 20% discount. The mortuary's air conditioning hummed sharply. Marcus stared at his father's face in the casket. The makeup artist had used too much foundation to cover those familiar wrinkles. The workshop at 3 p.m. goes ahead as planned, he said, leaving a voice message for his producer. From the hallway, he heard quiet sobbing. Are you serious? His cousin Emily burst in, her mascara smudged into black rings around her eyes. The funeral isn't even over yet. Marcus locked his phone screen, which displayed the trending topic hashtag Cohen's son coldly sells goods. Father hated mourning ceremonies the most, he said, smoothing the creases in his suit. Art must go on. The smell of cemetery soil mingled with perfume. As soon as the priest finished the final prayer, Marcus had already climbed into his nanny car. Take me straight to the theater, he told the driver, opening his to-do list. And don't forget to remind me about the 7 p.m. live stream. Outside the car window, reporters holding shame signs were climbing over the fence. His assistant handed him a tablet, hands shaking. Marcus, the public opinion, edit father's last rehearsal footage into the stream. He cut her off, suddenly noticing funeral dirt still caught under his nails. Title at Old Cohen's unfinished acting class. In the theater's green room, the mirror reflected his red-rimmed eyes. Marcus twisted open a bottle of foundation, only to overhear whispers from the workshop students outside the door. I heard even his eulogy was AI-generated. Why didn't Sophia come today? Isabel posted a photo in a black veil on Instagram. The makeup brush snapped in his hand. Marcus stared at his unfamiliar face in the mirror. Then suddenly, his father's voice echoed in his ears. The first rule of acting is, you must first be human. His phone vibrated again. The livestream administrator had sent a warning. A flood of users were reporting violations. He hurled the phone at the mirror. In the cracks, countless Marcuses stared back, all wearing twisted smiles. The screen spiderwebbed with cracks, and Marcus stared at the endless stream of report notifications, his throat tightening. What do they know? He roared at the empty air, fingers scrolling frantically across the broken screen. The green room door creaked open a crack. Sophia slipped in, holding the crying baby. Can you keep your voice down? She whispered. The baby's wails felt deafening in the small, enclosed space. Perfect timing, Marcus said, suddenly grabbing her wrist. Tonight's live stream. You bring Luca on camera. Say he's an orphan you adopted. Sophia stumbled back 2 steps, and the baby's bottle crashed to the carpet. Are you insane? Isabel's lawyer is already checking the birth certificate. Marcus burst out laughing, pulling a crumpled piece of paper from his suit pocket. Take a look at this. Berlin court's mediation document. If she dares to cause trouble, I'll expose how she kept Luca from his grandfather for 3 years. The baby's cries grew louder. Sophia patted his back, only to realize Marcus was secretly filming them. Delete that, she lunged for the phone. Last time you posted a photo of Luca, I lost my job. Be quiet. Marcus suddenly grabbed her chin. Don't you remember who bought your apartment? His fingers moved quickly across the screen. The live stream title will be A Single Father's Redemption. Tears rolled down Sophia's cheeks and onto the baby's swaddle. She watched Marcus straighten his tie in front of the camera, then spoke softly. The day of Mr. Old Cohen's funeral, Isabel came to see me. Marcus's fingers froze. How much did she pay you? He snapped, knocking over the foundation bottle as he turned. White liquid dripped down the edge of the table like melting candle wax. It's not about money, Sophia said, shifting the baby to her other arm. She said, last Christmas Eve, you broke into her apartment with 2 men and stole her mother's sapphire necklace. The fluorescent lights in the green room hummed. Marcus burst into laughter. That's marital property, clearly stated in the divorce agreement. He grabbed a wig from the dressing table. She danced ballet for 20 years. She can't even read a bank statement. His phone vibrated abruptly. His agent had sent an urgent message. Isabel was live streaming on Instagram. As Marcus clicked the link, he heard Sophia gasp. On the screen, Isabel sat without makeup, wearing a black turtleneck sweater. Behind her was the floor-to-ceiling window of her Berlin apartment. This necklace, she said, holding up a yellowed photo. My mother put it on me with her own hands before she died. Marcus refreshed the page frantically, but the number of viewers had already passed 100,000. Isabel's voice was quiet. Last December 24th, he broke into my apartment with 2 men, prying open the door. Turn it off. Marcus smashed the phone against the wall. Sophia shielded the baby in the corner, watching as he tore off his tie and wrapped it around his hand. You know what's the most ridiculous part? Isabel's live stream continued, her voice coming from the shattered speaker. The day he stole the necklace, Luca had a fever of 40 degrees. Marcus fell silent. He stared at the glinting phone shards on the floor, his own heavy breathing echoing in his ears. The mirror reflected his flushed face, his collar stained with foundation and sweat. Sophia seized the chance to edge toward the door with the baby. Stop, Marcus said, not looking up. Give me Luca's medical insurance card. What do you want it for? Sophia's voice trembled. To prove I'm a responsible father, of course, he said, baring his teeth in a smile. He pulled a stack of cash from his wallet. Go buy a new outfit. Be at the live stream on time at 7 p.m. Chaotic footsteps sounded in the hallway. His assistant burst in, panic-stricken. Marcus! Christian just released a statement supporting Isabel. Marcus slowly fastened his cufflinks. The man in the mirror had regained his flawless smile. Prepare a press release, he said softly. Title it An Artist Oppressed by Powered. Suddenly, Sophia thrust the baby into the assistant's arms. I've had enough, she said, grabbing her bag and rushing toward the door. Marcus grabbed a handful of her hair, yanking her back. Think about your visa status, darling, he whispered in her ear, his voice as sweet as poison. The Austrian immigration office just loves investigating sham marriages. The baby let out a shrill, heart-wrenching cry. Marcus let go of her hair, watching Sophia collapse to the floor, sobbing. He straightened his suit, ready to leave, only to bump into a stagehand holding a phone at the door. Delete that, Marcus said, reaching for the phone. The stagehand stepped back, the camera still pointed at him. It was then that Marcus realized the live stream was still running. Dense comments flooded the screen. Scum, call the police. Who is Luca's real father? The green room lights flickered. Marcus stood frozen, his heartbeat thundering in his ears. The stagehand's phone camera trembled, capturing the half of the sapphire necklace peeking out of Marcus's suit pocket. Marcus stared at the comments scrolling across the screen, his throat tightening. The words crawled into his retinas like venomous snakes. Scum, who is Luca's real father? The police are on their way. He reached for the phone again, but the stagehand stepped back, his lens fixed on the sapphire necklace peeking from Marcus's pocket. Turn it off. Marcus's voice was hoarse. He found his hands shaking. The baby's cries stopped suddenly, and Sophia seized the chance to grab the child and rush out. Marcus turned to chase her, but his assistant blocked his way. Boss, the live stream has been banned. The green room lights flickered on and off. Marcus touched the necklace in his pocket. The metal clasp dug painfully into his palm. Contact the lawyer, he said, loosening his tie. Tell him Isabel is slandering me. The assistant hesitated, then handed him a tablet. Sophia just posted on Twitter. On the screen was a photo of a hospital birth certificate, with Luca's parents' names circled in red. Marcus burst out laughing. So this bitch finally learned how to use social media? Rapid footsteps echoed in the hallway. His producer burst in, his face ashen. The Vienna bank froze the cruise account. He clutched a court summons. They're demanding immediate repayment of the €3 million loan. Marcus slowly fastened his cufflinks. The man in the mirror had a twitching smile. Father's life insurance, he began, only to be cut off. Mr. Old Cohen changed the beneficiary, the producer said, flipping through documents. Everything was donated to the children's theater. The baby's cries suddenly came from the end of the hallway. Marcus rushed out, only to see Sophia rummaging through her bag at the elevator. "Give Luca to me," he said, reaching for the baby basket. "I need a paternity test now." Sophia slapped his hand away. "Don't touch him," her voice trembled. "The immigration office already gave me a temporary asylum visa." The elevator doors reflected her red, swollen eyes. "Isabel's lawyer helped me." Marcus suddenly jammed his hand in the elevator door. "You stole the cash from the safe," he said, staring at her bulging handbag. "That was Luca's education fund." "Education fund?" Sophia scoffed, pulling a document from her bag. "You mortgaged the apartment to loan sharks last month." The elevator doors began to close. Her final words slipped through the gap. "Goodbye, Marcus." The nanny car skidded to a stop at the theater's back door. As Marcus climbed in, his agent was on the phone, frantic. "Yes, delete all collaboration posters immediately. No, we won't do any interviews." When he saw Marcus, the agent covered the receiver. "Sophia took Luca and your Swiss bank you shield." The car radio was playing the evening news. Lawyers for the Cohen family confirmed that old Cohen's final will bequeaths all his art collection to the National Opera House. Marcus turned off the radio, only to discover the inner lining of his suit pocket had been slit, where he'd hidden his emergency diamond cufflinks. His phone vibrated. An unknown number sent a photo. Sophia in a swimsuit, leaning against a yacht, next to a Russian oligarch wearing sunglasses. The message read, "Thanks for the wife and kid. You can handle the debts yourself." Marcus stared at the baby stroller in the corner of the photo, then suddenly remembered something. He rummaged through all his pockets, finally finding a crumpled slip of paper, Luca's vaccination card. On the back was Sophia's new phone number, the ink still wet. "Turn around," he said, pounding the driver's seat. "Go to the Schönbrunn Palace Hotel." The agent grabbed his arm. "The police are waiting for you at the apartment to take your statement." Rain began to tap against the car windows. Marcus watched the rain streak down the glass like rivers, then suddenly realized he was smiling. He pulled out the sapphire necklace and held it up to the light. Inside the gem was a tiny crack, just like the line that had appeared on the coffin lid the day of his father's funeral. The agent was still on the phone, handling crisis PR. Quietly, Marcus rolled down the window and tossed the necklace into the rainy night. In the rearview mirror, a woman in a trench coat stood at the theater entrance, holding a live-streaming phone. In the glow of the camera, he recognized her as Isabel's assistant. The car radio suddenly cut to a breaking news report. Christian Wolff announces he will produce a new play, Nirvana, starring Isabel Cohen. The rain drowned out the rest. Marcus felt around the gap between the seats and found the vaccination card. On the back, there was a small, added note. "Luca is lactose intolerant. Don't forget." Isabel's fingers brushed the rehearsal room mirror, picking up a thin layer of dust. Christian stood at the door, holding 2 cups of coffee. There was a faint lipstick stain on the rim of one. "Thank you," Isabel said, taking the coffee. It was the perfect temperature. She noticed the white rose boutonniere peeking out of Christian's suit pocket, the same one old Cohen had worn to the premiere of Love on the Danube years ago. The rehearsal room speakers suddenly began playing a Chopin nocturne. Christian pressed the remote. "Do we need to adjust this soundtrack?" His gaze flicked to the fading scar on Isabel's ankle, the one she'd gotten dancing Swan Lake a decade ago. Isabel shook her head, setting the coffee on the piano. In Father's Last Month, he hummed this melody all the time. She suddenly bent down to rub her knee. Christian immediately handed her a heating pad. "Don't wear knee pads during the dress rehearsal," he said, kneeling to tighten her point shoe ribbons. "The audience needs to see real pain." Isabel caught the scent of cedarwood perfume from his cuff, nothing like the cologne Marcus used to wear. Her assistant rushed in, flustered. "Ms. Cohen, the stage manager, says there's a problem with the follow spotlights." She held a revised program. "Should we cut the monologue in Act 3? Isabel looked at Christian, who was crossing out large sections of dialogue in the script with a pen. "Keep the last line," he said, looking up suddenly. "The one about art being light that pierces the abyss." The rehearsal room's glass door opened, and a lawyer walked in carrying a briefcase. "The final verdict on the jewelry case is in," he said, pulling out documents. A sapphire earring slipped from the folder. Isabel bent to pick it up. The gem glinted coldly in the light. "Marcus must return all the jewelry," the lawyer said, adjusting his glasses. "But he claims he already sold the necklace." Christian suddenly scoffed, pulling out his phone. "Want to see this?" On the screen was the latest auction record. The sapphire necklace had been sold by an anonymous bidder for 3 times its estimated value. Isabel's finger traced the sale date. It was exactly the anniversary of old Cohen's death. "He doesn't even care about preserving Father's last shred of dignity," Isabel said, tucking the earring into the lining of her wallet, where she still kept a photo of Luca's 100-day celebration. The edges of the photo were singed. While the sound engineer adjusted the equipment, he accidentally played an old recording. Old Cohen's hoarse laughter suddenly filled the rehearsal room. A true artist should be like a gardener. The recording cut off abruptly, and Isabel realized her hands were shaking. Christian turned off the speaker. "We can use this for the curtain call," he said, handing her a bottle of water. "Marcus went to the opera house yesterday to cause a scene, trying to get father's personal effects back." "What did he want?" Isabel paused, mid-twist of the water bottle cap. Water droplets slid down the bottle, leaving dark spots on the wooden floor. "He said he was looking for rehearsal notes," Christian said, dabbing the water stains with a tissue. "But he ransacked the dressing rooms. In the end, security caught him stealing posters." The assistant ran over with a tablet. "Ms. Cohen, the costume department sent the final version of the stage dress." She swiped the screen to show a black gown covered in crystals. "But the waist needs to be taken in 2 more centimeters." Isabel touched her ribs. She could feel their sharp outline clearly. She'd lost 8 kilograms in 3 months. Christian suddenly pressed his hand to the tablet. "Leave it as it is," he said, his thumb brushing the image of the dress on the screen. "The audience needs to see real thinness." The rehearsal room phone rang. The front desk announced that reporters had arrived. Christian frowned. "Tell them we're discussing set design," he said, turning to Isabel. "The Vienna Daily News wants to do a story painting Marcus in a bad light." Isabel walked to the window and pulled back the curtain. Sunlight fell on the bruise on her collarbone, the one she'd gotten from a fall during last week's rehearsal. In the parking lot below, she saw Marcus's agent talking to a reporter, waving a file folder. "Should we call security?" the assistant asked nervously. Christian had already picked up the phone. "Pull up the surveillance footage from the west entrance." "Yes, the man in the gray suit." Isabel suddenly pressed the in-call button. "Let him film," she said, untying her pointe shoes. Blood seeped through the bandages around her toes. "Tomorrow's headlines need a new story." The sound engineer adjusted the equipment again, and Chopin's melody filled the room once more. Isabel stepped barefoot in front of the mirror and began to spin, improvising. Christian watched the 2 figures reflected in the glass. One stumbling in reality, the other soaring in the mirror. The lawyer cleared his throat, breaking the silence. "One more thing," he said, opening the last page of the folder. "Marcus filed for a paternity test. He says he wants visitation rights to Luca." Isabel didn't stop dancing, but the smile vanished from her reflection. She turned to the lawyer, her left foot stepping into the water stain. "Tell him to explain the 200,000 euros in his Swiss account first," she said. The rehearsal room door burst open. The stage manager rushed in, holding a phone. "Look at the live stream." On the screen, Marcus was taking a selfie in front of his father's tombstone. In the background, samples of the perfume he was selling were placed on old Cohen's grave. Christian snatched the phone and threw it onto a cushion. Amid the dull thud, Isabel kept spinning, until she heard a clear click from her ankle. As she fell to her knees, she heard Christian say to the lawyer, "Add another restraining order." The lawyer's pen hovered over the visitation rights clause in the document. Ink bled into the words. Isabel pulled herself up using the bar. Her ankle had already swollen purple. "Add one more thing," she gasped. "Ban him from being within 500 meters of the theater." Christian picked up the cracked phone. The live stream was frozen on Marcus's twisted smile. "He just got a debt collection notice from the Vienna bank," he said, pulling out his own phone and swiping. "This is surveillance footage from outside his apartment this morning." On the video, Marcus was shoving a suitcase into a taxi. Half a painting frame stuck out of the trunk. Isabel squinted. "That's the Monet replica from Father's study." "A fake," Christian said, suddenly chuckling. "Old Cohen donated the original to the National Gallery a long time ago." He took an ice pack from the assistant and knelt to press it to Isabel's ankle. "Will you be able to recover in time for the premiere?" Someone knocked on the rehearsal room's glass door. A stagehand poked his head in. "Ms. Cohen, the projection equipment you ordered just arrived." Isabel hobbled 2 steps using the bar, then suddenly grabbed Christian's shoulder. "That interview. Father's last interview. It's already been restored," Christian said, pulling a USB drive from his briefcase. "The sound engineer said the static is too bad. He recommends keeping only 30 seconds. He hesitated. "Are you sure you want to play it during the curtain call?" Isabel's nails dug into her palm. She stared at her pale face in the mirror, suddenly smelling the cigar, smoke for her father's study. "Just the part where he says, 'the brilliance of humanity,'" she whispered, "and point the spotlight at the empty seat." The lawyer suddenly coughed. "Marcus just updated his Instagram," he said, turning the tablet toward them. The photo showed Luca playing at an amusement park in a new sweater with the caption, "A single father's happy moment." Isabel took the tablet and zoomed in on the background. Sophia's red handbag was visible next to the carousel. "He's using the child to whitewash himself," Christian sneered. "Do you want to contact Child Protection Services?" Isabel shook her head, suddenly noticing a blurry billboard in the corner of the photo. It was a promotional poster for Nirvana. The sound engineer knocked over a water cup while adjusting the equipment. Just as the water was about to reach the projector port, Christian blocked it with a script. "Careful," he said, shaking the soaked paper. "These are old Cohen's hand-edited lines." Isabel picked up a page. She recognized her father's messy handwriting. He'd crossed out the word revenge and replaced it with redemption. Her Jan brushed the word, and suddenly she heard shouting from the hallway. "Let me in. I have the right to watch the rehearsal." Marcus's voice came through the door, mixed with the security guard's shouts. Isabel's breathing quickened. The mirror reflected her tight jawline. Christian pressed the intercom. "Call the police," he said, turning to the lawyer. "Now we can add harassment charges." The commotion outside suddenly stopped, followed by a dull thud, as if something heavy had fallen. The assistant ran in, her hair askew. "He broke the fire hydrant," she said, holding up her phone in terror. "And he still lives streaming." On the screen, Marcus was straightening his tie in front of the camera, with a gush of water behind him. Isabel suddenly laughed. She dragged her injured foot to the piano and pressed the record button. "Dear audience," she said into the microphone, "welcome to this impromptu rehearsal of Nirvana." Chopin's nocturne poured from the speakers, drowning out the noise outside. Christian stared at her in surprise. Isabel began to spin to the music. Each step sent a jolt of pain through her, but her smile grew brighter. "Point the camera here," she told the stagehand. "Let him film all he wants." The lawyer's phone vibrated. He glanced at the screen, his expression turning odd. Marcus withdrew his paternity test application. He said, handing the phone to Christian. "His condition is a ticket to the premiere." Silence fell over the rehearsal room. Isabel didn't stop dancing. Sweat trickled down her neck and into the hollow of her collarbone. "Tell him," she gasped. "The back row, far corner. I'll reserve it for him personally." The projector suddenly turned on by itself. Old Cohen's image was cast onto the mirror wall. His tired eyes looked at everyone, and his lips moved, forming the unfinished last words of his life. As Isabel spun, her gaze met her father's in the projection. A sharp crack sounded as her ankle dislocated. Christian rushed forward to catch her as she fell. In his arms, she whispered in his ear, "By the necklace back." Over the stage manager's cries, they saw the projector had somehow switched to live surveillance. Marcus was prying open the door to the props room, a fire axe in his hand. The crash of the axe hitting the props room lock startled the entire theater. Isabel pushed herself out of Christian's arms and hobbled toward the monitor. Has he lost his mind? Her voice trembled. On the screen, Marcus was furiously hacking at the cabinet storing old Cohen's personal effects. As Christian pressed the alarm, the lawyer had already dialed the police emergency line. "Yes, armed break-in. National Opera House, basement level 2. Isabel suddenly grabbed his wrist. "Don't tell him it's Marcus. Just say there's an intruder." "What?" Christian frowned. On the monitor, Marcus had already pried open the cabinet and was shoving his father's manuscripts into a briefcase. Isabel stared at the faint blue glow in the corner of the screen. A police uniform will make him lash out and destroy those things. As the sirens drew near, Marcus suddenly looked up at the camera. His lips twisted into a grin, and he held up a yellowed photo. It was Isabel's first stage performance, with old Cohen by her side. "Want this?" he mouthed, and a lighter flame licked at the edge of the photo. Isabel's nails dug into her palm. She grabbed the intercom. "Marcus, the fire suppression system will activate any second," she said. Her voice echoed through the theater's speakers. "The water will ruin all the paper artifacts." Marcus's hand froze. He glanced around, suddenly noticing the sprinklers on the ceiling. When the first drop of water fell, he screamed and held the briefcase over his head, like a vulture caught in the rain. "Clever," Christian said softly. But Isabel's gaze was fixed on the outline of the necklace peeking from Marcus's suit pocket on the monitor. It was definitely her mother's missing sapphire necklace. Her breath caught. He's been lying this whole time. The moment the police kicked down the door, Marcus suddenly dropped to his knees. He held up his hands, and the briefcase fell to the floor, spilling open to reveal photos of Isabel from when she was a child. I just wanted to keep some memories." He sobbed, tears mixing with foundation to streak his face. "Cuff him," the officer in charge said. He recognized Marcus. "Jewelry theft and debt evasion. You'll be in jail all winter." As Marcus was dragged away, he suddenly twisted his head toward the camera. "Isabel, Luca misses his mother." The words cut like a knife into Isabel's heart. She stumbled, grabbing the control panel for support. Christian immediately turned off the monitor. "He's using the child," he said, handing her a cup of hot tea. He noticed her fingers were ice cold. "The paternity test results will be out tomorrow." Opening night arrived, and the opera house was packed. In the backstage, as Isabel adjusted her pointe shoes, her assistant rushed over, panicked. Marcus was released on bail. The tablet in her hand displayed a trending topic. Marcus was live-streaming outside the court. Justice will prevail. Ignore him, Isabel said, tightening her ribbons. The bruise on her ankle was still faintly visible under the foundation. Christian lifted the curtain and stepped in, a white rose tucked in his suit pocket. 5 minutes till curtain up, he whispered. We got the necklace back. Isabel took the velvet box. The sapphire glowed coldly in the light. Suddenly, she noticed tiny engraving on the back of the pendant. To my eternal little swan, mother. Tears fell onto the gem just as the curtain bell rang. At the final act of Nirvana, when old Cohen's voice in the projection said the brilliance of humanity, the entire audience stood and applauded. Amid the cheers, Isabel looked toward the empty seat in the far corner of the back row. Marcus had never shown up, but a man in a baseball cap was slipping out quietly, his back as gaunt as a dehydrated fish. 3 months later, the first snow of Vienna covered the steps of the National Opera House. As Isabel walked out with her Artist of the Year trophy, the reporters suddenly stirred. Across the street, Marcus lingered outside a convenience store, wrapped in a thin windbreaker, holding a cheap loaf of bread. Ms. Cohen, one reporter shouted, your ex-husband is now living in a shelter. Do you have anything to say? Isabel looked across the street. Marcus was handing his last few coins to a homeless man. His movements were painfully practiced. She walked toward her car, pulling a gilded envelope from her bag. This is the first batch of funding recipients from the old Cohen Foundation, she said, raising her voice deliberately. It includes 3 female theater artists who survived domestic violence. Marcus froze. When he turned around, Isabel saw a large bruise around his left eye fresh. They stared at each other across the street until a truck roared past. When the dust settled, only a fallen loaf of bread remained on the opposite sidewalk. Shall we chase him? Christian asked, opening the car door for her. Isabel shook her head, but handed the foundation brochure to a reporter. The last page has a helpline, she said. Her gaze flicked to the convenience store window across the street. Marcus's profile was visible, eavesdropping on the interview. At the celebration dinner that night, the lawyer brought the final court ruling. All of Marcus's assets have been frozen. He hesitated, but he pawned his wedding ring today to buy Luca a birthday present. Isabel traced the edge of her champagne glass. The date engraved inside the ring suddenly felt burning hot. It was the day she'd won her first dance award. Christian changed the subject smoothly. The Foundation's review meeting next week. Add one more spot, Isabel said suddenly. For the Single Fathers art program. She stood up, under everyone's surprised gaze. Excuse me. In the green room, she dialed Sophia's new number. Luca's laughter came through the line. He brought a toy today, Sophia said, her voice complicated. The tag said, Daddy loves you. Snow fell more heavily outside the window. Isabel stared at the frost patterns on the glass, then hung up gently. In the mirror, she suddenly saw a figure behind her. Marcus, standing by the air vent, clutching a rain-soaked program for Nirvana. Heating repairman, he mumbled, tugging at his dirty overalls. But his eyes were fixed on the sapphire necklace around her neck. I just came to return this. He pulled the matching earring from his pocket. It was still stained with dried blood. Isabel didn't scream. She looked quietly at the man who had once been so dazzling. Now, his fingernails were caked with grime. The police are downstairs, she said calmly, but pressed a hidden latch on the dressing table. Fire escape, turn right. Marcus didn't move. He stared at the blood on the earring. That day at the cemetery, the debt collectors. His voice trailed off as footsteps sounded in the hallway. He darted toward the air vent like a frightened animal, but left behind a crumpled piece of paper. It was Luca's vaccinati.